Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on where you are right now. So welcome to this free session on acing reading comprehension. So before we start, let me again ensure that you guys can hear me, and let's do a bit of a sound check. Just one sec. If you guys can hear me fine, click on yes. That way I know that there's no issue with the audio. All right, so I can see that there's no issue with the audio. So welcome folks, welcome to the session. Let me introduce myself. My name is Harsha. I'm one of the RC experts at e-GMAT. I'll be one of your hosts for today's session. The other hosts are Shraddha, who is one of our senior most subject matters experts and also a very, very prominent RC expert. We also have Sandeep with us in the session today, who is going to help us with answering all your non-subject related queries. All right. So we have a very power-packed session here for you today. It's all about how to ace reading comprehension. And to do that, we're going to introduce some certain reading strategies. And this session is going to be a slightly application-heavy session. So in order to help you for that, in order to help you prepare for this particular session, we had sent a couple of free videos your way. So that's what you see here, video lessons on main point 1 and main point 2. If you've gone through this, that's fantastic. It gives you a little more context about what we're going to do today. But even otherwise, these are part of your free trial after the session. When you can go through them, you'll find a lot of value from it. All right. So this is main point 1 and main point 2. At this point, let me also inform you very quickly about an upcoming session. At e-GMAT, we keep doing these sessions every month, every weekend, so that we can also engage with our students better, and you guys can also get some real benefit out of it. So tomorrow, for example, that's August 22, we have our geometry webinar. So this is for all of you people who are uncomfortable with geometry and need a little bit of a extra push to get you better at geometry. And next week on Sunday, next week on Saturday, we actually have our free pre-thinking seminar. Pre-thinking seminar is for all things critical reasoning. It's the bedrock of critical reasoning, if you ask me. It's a method that was pioneered by e-GMAT, and it's a very scalable way to solve from the easiest level to the toughest level of CR problems. And this particular session is going to be focused on pre-thinking for assumptions, but the approach that you take away from it applies to almost all CR questions. So that's coming right up next week. We also do a lot of sessions throughout the weekdays. So we have our MBA Analytical, as part of our MBA Analytical 2K21 series, we have Malvika coming in for a session. So she's going to talk about your ideal profile to get into IAC Navara. What kind of profile do you need? What kind of scholarships can you look for, and the job opportunities, and so on and so forth. So this is coming right up on August 26th, 7 p.m. IST. So for those of you, this goes beyond the GMAT. For those of you who want a little more about the broad MBA journey, what kind of application you need to really build, what should you really have on your profile, this session could be very, very useful for you. All right. That's it. Let's get to know you guys a little better. So there was one poll that I had here, which around 115 of you are here today. Make sure that you guys fill this. I really want to know what is the batch composition. The other question that I really want to understand is what is your target GMAT score? So let me bring that up as well, so that we have a little more idea about this particular batch. All right, so if I'm looking at the first poll, when do you plan to take the GMAT? So around 40% of the batch more than 6 days, and around 60% of the batch is over at least a month, as in, yeah, around 60% of the batch is planning to take it after a month. So for those of you who are planning to take it after a month, you have a lot of time to imbibe the strategies that we're going to present today. But even if you're taking the test in fewer than 15 days, that's 12% of you. Even for you, what you learned today, it's not rocket science. It is extremely logical. You will find that you can figure out, you will find that you improve even if you're able to incorporate this into your reading strategies from today onwards. So very happy to see that. And let's look at the other chart. That's also very interesting because it tells us about the ambition level of the batch. So around 125 of you right now. And I can see that at over 60% of us want that 730 plus or higher, which is very, very good. We should have that ambition, because a lot of your GMAT score is not just about cracking that exam. You will see in real life, when you go and start applying to these universities, the one thing you'll observe is there is a correlation between a high GMAT score and not just getting into a good B school, but also in terms of the scholarships that you can get, and also in terms of your future earning potential. It kind of matters. So I'm very happy to see that around 60%, 65% of the batch wants at 730 or higher. All right, that's great to see. With that, let's move to the main presentation plane. And I'm going to give this a second because it typically takes some time for it to load for everybody. So let me just clear all answers and let's bring this poll. So if you guys can see the presentation, it should read reading comprehension. It's a black colored slide. If it's visible for you, click on yes. So by the way, folks, I'm going to be introducing a lot of these polls. That's our way of interacting with you. So all of you are attending, be extremely responsive on the polls. That's the way you get the maximum from a session like this. Okay. So I can see that it seems to be working for most of you. For the two of you for whom it's not working, give it a little bit of time. It should be back very soon. It's just your slow internet. It should come very soon. Okay. So very good to see. Welcome to today's session. What are we going to do in this webinar? Just give me one sec, guys. Let me make sure that I have my pen with me. Just give me one sec. That way I'll be able to do this a lot better. All right, so perfect. So there are fundamentally three parts to this webinar, and for a lot of you, this is your first introduction to e-GMAT at the very least. For a lot of you, you've decided, you've been doing these jobs for a few years, you've decided that you're going to get into an MBA program, and therefore you're exploring the GMAT universe. So I'm going to spend the first 5 to 6 minutes talking about the GMAT universe and where e-GMAT fits and all that. It gives you a little bit of context as to how we can help you. Then we're going to do the core session. So that's around 2 hours typically. And then if you have any questions, we can take those as well at the end of the session. All right. So a lot of you have decided that, hey, I need to do MBA. I need to do an MBA. I need to crack this exam called the GMAT. So when you talk about cracking an exam, there are some things that you need to learn. And this is where something called learning architecture becomes very important to understand. So to learn anything, not just for GMAT, but if you're practicing or preparing for any exam, there are typically two architectures of learning that you can actually follow. One is called a book-based architecture, and the other is called a private tutoring-based architecture. When I say a book-based architecture, it's kind of how we went through our entire schooling. For most of us, in our schooling, that's what we did. We looked at textbooks, we learned from textbooks, right? That's one way of going about it. It's not just entirely, when you say book-based, it's not that it has to be a physical textbook. There are even online players who, end of the day, they just convert their books into audio-visual format and give it as video chapters. So book-based architecture is essentially entirely what I call as a non-personalized or very limited personalized approach. Why do I say that? It's because what happens in a book-based architecture is, imagine you're going through your typical textbooks, right? You have some chapters that are built in, you learn from those chapters, and there are very limited assessments that are built in, and the onus is on you. It's up to you to figure out whether you're learning or not. You believe that you've understood it, and then later on you have some assessment. If you do well in the assessment, you think you've learned it all, and then you hope that you've learned it. That's about it. The assessment points are extremely limited. The feedback that you're getting is entirely up to you. It's up to you to decipher whether you're going well or not. That's fundamentally what a book-based architecture means, whether it's an actual book or if it's online. A private tutoring approach, on the other hand, goes the other way. This is like having your own private tutor whose job is to analyze each and every data point of your performance, the kind of analysis that you may or may not be able to do, and give you very, very specific feedback on where you're faltering, if you're faltering, and what you need to do to course correct. So most of the players in the e-GMAT space have typically followed the book-based architecture. e-GMAT, when it started, it had the vision of starting a private tutoring based architecture. In the initial years of e-GMAT, the objective was to be as good as your average private tutor. I'm happy to say that right now we have reached the level we are better than your average private tutor. In a couple of years, we are going to be better than the best private tutors out there. So why do I focus so much on book-based versus private tutoring architecture? Because at every point of your preparation journey, the kind of architecture that you study with actually has an impact. So let's talk about how your GMAT journey typically goes. You've decided that you want to get a score, let's say 720, let's say 730, because that seems to be 60% of this batch, all right? So if 730 plus is the target, what do? You typically make a plan to achieve a goal that, hey, on these days I'm going to study geometry, on these days I'm going to study reading comprehension, so on and so forth. Then you try to execute on your plan. And then hopefully, if you have learned all the concepts well, then you'll be able to apply this. But just application will get you still 680 or something like that, not more than that. All right. To reach that 730 plus, you need to reach the next level that's called mastery. By that I mean you need a percentage that's like 9. You're better than 90% of the batch. You call this as 90th percentile, or in other words, you're better than 90% of the test taking population. So fundamentally, you make a plan, you try to go as per that plan. Now let me demonstrate to you the difference between a private tutoring kind of approach versus a bookish approach on just the first aspect here, that is making that initial plan. All right. So how do you construct a study plan for yourself? So if you are going by a bookish based architecture, you buy the book and then you just read each and every chapter one by one, or you go through each and every video lesson one by one, and then you hope that you got the concept. If you're doing it the other way, if you're following a private tutoring based approach, it's not as straightforward. So imagine that you have to go from 600 to 720. It gets much more interesting and personalized. First, we have a way to identify your starting ability. That is step 1. You understand how good you are in algebra, how good you are in geometry, how good you are in critical reasoning. Your starting ability across each and every subsection is calculated. Once you've quantified that, then your project milestones, your individual milestones, which are the stepping stones till the final score, they are customized as per your abilities. So if you're already fantastic in reading comprehension, you do not have to spend so much time on reading comprehension. Your milestones will not be that much oriented towards reading comprehension because you don't have to study that much. So you've defined your milestones, and based on that, your entire course can get personalized. What you really need to focus on versus what you do not need to focus on. If any of you have seen the Quant 2.0 course, you will see this in action. Based on how you perform in your diagnostics, the system actually suggests to you whether you should be skipping this particular portion or whether you should definitely be going through this particular portion. So that personalization is happening at an individual level. That's your private tutor looking at your data and telling you what you should do. So how do we do this initial quantification? Very, very simple. We have what is called as a sigma x mock. Right now, this is the closest thing to the actual GMAT. If you take a sigma x mock, you can get a very realistic picture of where you're standing currently. And anybody can take a sigma x mock for free. The first sigma x mock is absolutely free. Anybody can take this. If you take this, you get a very good estimate broken down to subsection. How good you are at algebra, how good you're in arithmetic at that level. You can evaluate your starting ability. Once you evaluated your starting ability, then we have what is called a build what is called a personalized study plan, which is fundamentally an AI utility. We spent thousands of man hours building this so that you guys can build this in 7 minutes flat. So we help you build your own personalized study plan. How does that work? You input your actual starting ability scores, then you input your target score, whether it's 720 or 730, and then the AI actually calculates what you really need. So these are your target abilities to get that particular 720 score, for example. Once you're able to do this, then the system helps you build very specific milestones for each of those subsections. That's what you see here. So what you see on the left are the current abilities, and what you see on the right are the target abilities. And for example, this says you should spend 1.4 weeks in this March specifically on arithmetic. It gives you that very clear picture of what you should focus on. It helps clear the clutter from your overall preparation. It makes it very systematic. So in terms of input parameters that this takes in, it's not just about your scores. You also have to factor in how much time do you have. Firstly, when are you planning to take the test? And secondly, on an average weekday, how long can you provide for studies? How long can you study for the exam? And on a weekend, how much can you study for an exam? Maybe on a weekday you can spare 1 hour. On a weekend you may be able to spare 5 hours. So the system has to adjust to all that and give you a very realistic plan. So fundamentally, we are able to help you create that study plan which is personalized to you. And what I want to emphasize is this is something you'll only get in a private tutoring based architecture. You're never going to get this from a bookish architecture kind of GMAT preparation. Okay. So does this really translate to success? I've told you so much. I've harped on this for so long about the difference between private architecture versus bookish architecture. Does it really translate to success? Yes. This is stats from 2016. 2016 is a landmark year because this is the year when GMAT Club started verifying their reviews. So the same ESR that you send to universities, GMAT Club uses those ESRs to verify your score, whether you got this particular score that you're claiming. Ever since that happened, e-GMAT has got a fantastic number of reviews on its platform, and this is something you can go and check out on e-GMAT on the GMAT Club portal as well. So much so that we actually have more than all the other players combined, and that for me is real success. Some of you may then wonder, but this is from 2016. Are we still good? What about recent times? So let me show you data in the last 5 months. So this is January to May, and what you can see is verified scores on GMAT Club. There are totally 190 of them, out of which 40 are people who did their own self-preparation. The remaining 150 are from any of those GC partners, including companies like e-GMAT and Target Test Prep. And you can see a very strong gulf between e-GMAT, TTP, and the rest of the players here. Let's break this down one step further, and you'll understand why I'm so confident about our results. Out of these 150 in the last 150 700 plus scores in the last 5 months, e-GMAT has 40%, a little over 40% of those scores. TTP is a close second. Everybody else is lesser than this particular number. That should tell you a little bit about the kind of results that we're getting. It's all thanks to the focus on the methodologies. How about the last 5 weeks? Even in the last 5 weeks, we have almost double the next person in line. So definitely we have achieved the results, and that's why we're here right now doing this session for you. All right. So for those of you who believe that you can get some benefit from what I just discussed about the study plan, let me bring the study plan link right here. Check it out. The one caveat here is the slots for these are always limited. So if you do not get a slot, try again in some time. You'll surely get it later. All right. So let me also talk about where you can find a little more about success stories. I gave you all the statistical data from GMAT Club, but you should also listen to real life success stories. Why do I say that? Not just e-GMAT, you should always listen to successful students, whether it is any company or any student, because they tell you the truth as it is. You should go and check out. We have unedited raw footage of real interviews with students who have made this. The reason you should do this is you actually understand from people who have been in the same shoes as you. It's very, very useful. Make sure you do that. So if any of you want to connect with Rajat, it would be very great on LinkedIn. The reason I say that is Rajat is extremely well connected in the GMAT universe. So if you want to get in touch with all things GMAT, Rajat's LinkedIn is a very good place to start. So make sure you connect with him as well. Okay. So let's talk about RC now. Let's get into topic. Let's talk about what do we need to do regarding reading comprehension. So firstly, I was very happy to see that so many of you want that 730 plus score. That's great. Now let me answer the question. What is it that you need in RC to get that 730 plus score? Very, very simple. Your ability has to be 90th percentile or above. 90th percentile means you are better than 90% of the test taking population. You've demonstrated that in the exam. All right. So to do this, the first thing we need to do is we need to understand your current approach. This is what I call as a self-diagnosis. Without understanding where you currently stand, what is your current approach, you're not going to just believe me when I show you my approach. So let's talk about your RC approach. There are fundamentally two things that I'm very interested in knowing. The first is called method. The second is called motivation. All right. So let's talk about motivation first. The first question I have for you, and let's put this to a yes/no poll. How many of you enjoy RC? And when I say enjoy RC, you look forward to RC of a lot of these other sessions. Some of you definitely enjoy SC. Some of you might enjoy CR. How many of you enjoy RC? So as I said, this is a low risk environment. You should be participating actively. That's the way you get the max from a session like this. Okay. So you can already see a lot of truth right here. For a lot of us, we like CR, we like sentence correction, it's so sweet, it's so small. A lot of us have this aversion towards reading comprehension. The next question is for all of you who say, no, I do not really enjoy RC. What is it about RC that you do not enjoy? You can answer this in the short answer poll that's just opened for you. It's the poll at the bottom. Why do you not enjoy RC? What do you not like about RC? The reason I'm asking this is we're going to discuss some of these aspects. It's very, very vital. It's as vital as solving questions. Perfect. So I can already see a lot of, let me broadcast results so that we can see as a group what we are exactly doing here. Topic is too boring. Yes. Lose focus. Yes. Needs a lot of patience. Absolutely. Length of the passage. Yes. Too technical. Okay. That's true. What else is there? Too long, of course. So a lot of us have this problem with the length of it. Time is one thing that we are going to discuss, that hey, it's too time consuming. So typically, and I can see some of these points right here, a lot of people are uncomfortable with the length of RC passages. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the complexity of RC passages, or in other words, the passages are dense either because of unfamiliar words or extremely complex sentences, long convoluted sentences. The third aspect that I typically see, and I see a little bit of that as well, is topics. Some of us are not comfortable with each and every topic. Some of us find some topics boring. By the time we're done with the session, I'm going to address each of these points. Okay. Now, the second aspect that I'm very interested in is your method. So as far as RC is concerned, there are three ways of doing RC typically. Either you skim through the passage, and these are all methods that have existed for a long time. Either you skim through the passage and then you go to the questions, or you go to the questions so that the questions give you some context and then you jump to the passage because you already know the questions, you know where to look in the passage. Or number three, you read the passage and then you go to the questions. So which of these three methods is what you guys follow? So let me bring that to a Let me bring the poll for that as well. Don't put it on the short answer part. Which of these is the three methods that you follow? All right, so let me broadcast the results. So around 40% of the batch follows method 1 and method 2, and 60% of the batch is following method 3. So irrespective of the method that you follow, how many of you have faced the situation where you read everything about the passage, but even after you read the passage, you fell into this trap that when you went to the questions, you were a little clueless? Has that happened to any of you? This situation. You read the passage, you thought you got it, but then when you went to the passage, when we went to the questions, something happened. You felt a little lost. Has that happened? In reality, this happens to, yeah, this is a very realistic picture. 99% of us actually face this. And despite following, even if you're following the right method, sometimes we face this. So, which brings me to my point here. There are three approaches to RC. If you ask us at e-GMAT, we believe that method 1 and method 2, these approaches do not work on the GMAT. For GMAT RC, these methods are not going to get you. They may help you with medium level questions, but when the passages get difficult, when the questions get difficult, you're not going to survive with these methods. It's very, very clear to us. We believe method 3 works, and 60% of you are following method 3. So through this session, what I hope to achieve is, for those of you who are following method 1 and method 2, I hope that we can transition you towards method 3. And for those of you who are already trying method 3, this session will make you better at it. Okay. So the last question, and this is what I call as pure self-appraisal. In your own assessment of your abilities, what is your understanding of a passage after you've read the passage? And this is the last aspect of self-assessment. Because improvement starts from understanding where we currently stand, and then we know what we need to do. Perfect. So around 60% of the batch is in the 50 to 75% range. Around 30% is in that 75 to 90 range, which tells us that all of us have a lot of work to do. So I told you that we want to get 730 plus. I told you that that requires an ability of 90th percentile. The level of understanding that we need to get this percentage of this percentile understanding is also 90%. You need to be able to understand at least 90% of the passage well, properly, in order to be able to do this. All right. So now let's get to specifically what we're going to do in this session. Now we're going to discuss the theory of the session before we get into the practicals. Okay. So the goal of the session is to help you ace reading comprehension. How are we going to do that? I'm going to introduce to you 3 reading strategies. These reading strategies will help you extract more from the passage than you're currently getting. But that alone is not enough. That's only part 1. You still you still need to be able to apply this information to solve questions. So we're going to teach you how to do that as well. We're going to solve one main point question and one inference question, two short passages right here, and then the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Everything that we have applied, if everything that we have learned from point 1 and point 2, you're going to apply it on a actual considered to be 700 level GMAT passage. Okay, and if you're able to apply everything you've learned, then you will definitely see an improvement in how you do that. Okay, so let's talk about the first aspect and pay a lot of attention. These aspects are much more important. So what do I mean by attitude? Why have I written attitude here? I'm going to introduce to you 3 reading strategies, but honestly, none of them are going to work if the right mindset is not there. What do I mean by that? When I asked you about motivation, only 20% of the batch actually enjoyed RC. 80% of the batch did.
Hello everyone, this is Shraddha. Harsha is trying to fix his audio. I think he's changing his microphone. Something just went abruptly wrong. So he's just trying to be a little patient. He's gonna come back. Thank you for that. Okay, that tells me that at least you can hear me. So yes, yes. Oh, thank you so much. Let me just move this poll, and I could just maybe take you through this slide while we wait for Harsha to come back. So Harsha was talking about this attitude, and he said that RC is a lot about mental attitude, because the first point that you see here, get immersed in the passage. And if I bring my pen in here, this first point that we see here, get immersed in the passage, this is all about the mental attitude. Why? Because yes, most of you, when Harsha asked that, what is the most challenging part, or what is it that you don't like about RC, is that, you know, we don't get comfortable topics. And most of the time that's the case, that we don't get topics in which we are very comfortable, especially those humanity passages that talks about some ism, some movement, some emancipation and things like that. And because they are very jargon heavy also, the technical terms that we were talking about, even the language of that of the passages make it very, very difficult to have a liking for that passage. And the moment we feel that, oh my God, what kind of a passage is this, we are blocking ourselves from immersing into the passage. And if we block ourselves from immersing into the passage, we will definitely not read the passage, and we will not definitely process the information the way we are supposed to do. It's going to be very half-hearted. We are probably, we all have this experience that when we do something with a lot of interest and something that we do not put interest in, something we are doing just for the heck of it, of course, our mind is not there, our heart is not there. And that's why that's a very mechanical thing. You're not really able to extract a lot of information from there or process the information. In the very same way, we need to tell ourselves, just give yourself any incentive that maybe it's just for that dream score that you're looking for, or just tell yourself that this is just about GMAT. I'm going to finish my GMAT, and after that, no more reading these passages. But if I want that goal to achieve, I'll have to love RC passages, no matter what kind of passage they throw at me. Well, how I look at it is that, every passage has something to tell me, and no knowledge goes for waste, So let me just read the passage to know something maybe interesting. Probably, I would just learn something out of which I do. Okay. So that's about getting immersed. Now, Harsha says that he would want to come back, so let's give him a try.
Hey, all right. Thanks, Shraddha. Firstly, can you guys hear me now? I have switched over my audio. I think you should be able to hear me fine now. Perfect. Thanks a lot. So thanks, Shraddha, for holding the fort. So fundamentally, the attitude piece is very important, and I'll tell you why. A lot of us get into RC with this negative mindset that, hey, I don't know this topic very well. I don't know if the length is too long, complex words, complex sentences. But if you come into RC with those aspects in mind, it's very hard to get immersed in the passage. And I'm going to show you what immersion means. And when you're not able to immerse yourself, it's very hard to understand the author's intent. And when you're not able to understand the author's intent, it's very, very tough to do well in RC. So for all the strategies that we do, that we're going to discuss right now, keep this in mind. What you need in RC is what I call as a killer mentality. When I say killer mentality, I mean whatever the topic, I don't care. Whatever the complexity, I don't care. Words I'm not familiar with, I don't care. Whatever the length, I don't care. In those 3 to 4 minutes that I'm reading this RC passage, my job is to ensure that I extract everything I can from the passage. That's the attitude you need going into RC, okay? So be very, very clear about that. Now let's talk about very specifically the theory of what we're going to do. I'm going to introduce to you 3 reading strategies. The first is called sentence structure. So RC passages have some of those sentences are extremely long, they're convoluted. To really understand an RC sentence, you need to be able to break it down into chunks and understand its meaning bit by bit. So we're going to teach you how to do that. That's the first reading strategy. The second one is a very important one. It's called keywords. Keywords are very specific words or phrases that the author uses in a particular passage and which can convey and indicate very, very important meaning. The good thing about keyword, what is really great about keywords is that these are not words that you or I are not familiar with. It's not jargon. It's words like thus, however, moreover, firstly, and etc, etc, etc. These are words that you know. These are words that I know. Typically, when you're reading, you don't focus on these words. What I'm asking you to do is, when you start focusing on these words and ask the question, why is this word here? Why has the author put this particular word here? When you ask that question while you're reading the passage, you kind of understand the author's intent. And when you're able to understand the intent, it becomes much easier to process the content. You'll be able to understand what happens at a much easier level. I'm going to give you a very quick example. Let us say you see a particular sentence in your RC passage. The sentence is, work from home, that's WFH. Work from home is fantastic for employee productivity. Or in other words, I'm telling you something that is that's a positive about work from home. Now, the next sentence starts with the word however. Pardon my writing, it's not so great right now, but you have this word however. All right. The question I have for you is, what will follow however? What does however indicate? Put it on the short answer board. This is a quick example of what I'm talking about with regard to keywords. Contrast, perfect. some contrast with what has been said earlier. Earlier, typically when you're reading passages, the mistake we make is we don't focus on these words and you just read the text as it is. What I want you to do is, you read that work from home has this great advantage of employee productivity. However, you pause at this point, that is however, and ask the question, why is this here? The answer is, that's because the author wants to indicate some kind of a contrast. So what will logically follow? Or in other words, what are you predicting that the author will write next? Some of you already wrote it there. Something negative about work from home. For example, work from home, unfortunately, however, is also leading to a significant amount of employee stress. Why does this work? Because you already understood the intent of the author before jumping into reading that sentence. I gave you a very easy example that you would have understood even if you did not focus on however. But imagine a super complicated sentence which is very hard to understand. But because of that word, however, you still know what the author is really trying to talk about. So I want you to start focusing on those keywords. That's very important. The third and most underrated strategy is summarization. When do you summarize? At e-GMAT, if your student will tell you that you have to summarize at the end of the paragraphs, of course. But fundamentally, you have to summarize every time you reach a point of information overload. What do I mean by that? Every time you'll see in your especially complex RC passages, you will see a point where you just read something and then you realize you have no idea what you just read. When you reach those kinds of points, the mistake that a lot of students make is they just move on. And if you have not understood what you just read, your chances of understanding what is going to follow are abysmal. Imagine instead you realize that, hey, I just read this complicated piece of text, I did not understand it well. Imagine you summarize it in your own words. You spend the time to understand it in your own words. If you do that, understanding the next piece of information becomes much more easier. By the way, this is the one reason why a lot of us get lost in those complex humanities kind of passages. It's because you don't summarize. You typically get lost in those passages because we read something, we did not understand it, and then we just moved on. Instead, summarize in your own words and then move on. You'll see a significant improvement in your RC just by this. So this is the theory. Now we're going to do the practical. Everybody is ready to do this? Let's hear a quick auspicious yes in the short answer pod so that let's begin. Perfect. So how this is going to work is you're going to solve a main point question. The passage will be here, and after that I'm going to introduce the question. All right, so here's the passage for you. All the best. Take your time. Once you're done reading the passage, click on yes. Okay. All right, I can see that a lot of you are done reading the passage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the passage right here at the bottom of your screen for those of you who want to refer to it. Meanwhile, I'm going to introduce the question. All right. So just give me one sec. There it is. So all of you who are participating, please click on still solving. That way you guys time yourself as a batch. I'm not timing you. All right. So here's the question, guys. All the best. Many of you are done, so let's take another 15 seconds for this, and then let's start solving this. All right, 3, 2, 1, and let's hold. Perfect. So let's get some feedback. How do you guys feel about this particular question? Let's put this here on the short answer board, guys. Let's clear this. How was this question, or rather, how was the passage? Forget the question. Let's talk about the passage. How did you find this particular passage? Couple of ECs, read the passage twice, complex words. Oh my god, DNC. So we're going to look at that. Thanks a lot for that. That's very interesting. Outer world stuff. Horrible. Wordy. Complicated language, but easy context. So by the end of within the next 5 minutes, all of you are going to tell me that this is very easy. Okay. So let's start solving this now. Pay a lot of attention because this is kind of the core of what we're here for. And how we're going to do this is, I'm going to just let you know where you should focus your attention. You guys are going to tell me all the answers. Okay? And that's going to be fun. So let's start. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. Let's pause right here. So the first question for you. The author is saying bordering on the extreme. What does he or she mean by that? What can you infer from just this portion that's bordering on the extreme? Something as per the author is bordering on the extreme. What does this bordering on the extreme mean? He is giving an extreme point of something. That's true. He does not agree to it, feels it's overboard. That's a fantastic answer. One extreme definition of easy. Absolutely. So I'm seeing some right answers there. Fundamentally, bordering on the extreme is describing this one definition. But what the author is trying to tell us is, hey, this particular definition, it's a little extreme. It's a little out there. It's not your average regular definition. It's somewhat an extreme or exaggerated definition. So that's the first piece of information that you should extract. The author is telling us that this one definition, whatever that is, it's a little extreme. It's a little out there. Is that clear? That's the first piece of information that you infer. Just from those first 4 words. All right, now let's move on. Then the author says one definition of ethnocentrism. Now, focus on this one definition. This is, for me, is a keyword. Why is the author saying one definition? What does he or she mean by it? Or in other words, ask yourself the question, what can you infer from one definition? Might be other definition, that's true. What else can you infer? That's true. Any other inference that you can make? Other viewpoint that you're right there, you're around there. So fundamentally, you guys are on the right track. Let me just open your eyes a little bit more. One definition gives me 2 inferences. The first one is definitely what you guys said, that is, hey, in all probability, there are other definitions as well. Fantastic. The other thing you should understand from one definition of EC is, the author is not telling you this is the definition. In fact, the author is telling you that this particular definition is a little exaggerated. He in fact is not really agreeing with it also. So another thing you can definitely say right here is, it's not necessarily the definition the author agrees with. It's just one definition. And as per me, this definition is exaggerated. It's not even a good definition that way. So you can say that the author does not necessarily agree with this definition. Very, very clear. I hope this is clear. It's a very important aspect. Some of you picked the wrong choice only because this was not clear. So bordering on the extreme, exaggerated definition. One definition of EC, probably more than one definition exists, and not necessarily my definition if I'm the author. Now let's move on. One definition of EC, ethnocentrism, let's just call it EC for short. One definition of EC considers it a schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation. Let's hold on, it's complicated. Let's hold on right here. I do not know the meaning of the word schismatic. Some of you may know, some of you may not know. But what I'm going to tell you is it doesn't matter. Can I still say that, hey, this is talking about some kind of a difference between something called as an in-group and something called as an out-group? That much we can say, right? So this one definition of EC, it believes that it is some kind of a difference between in-group and out-group. That much we can say, even without understanding schismatic. Now let's move on. In which is an important keyword. In which tells me what is going to follow is the description of this differentiation. So one definition of EC considers it to be some kind of a difference. So what exactly is the difference being talked about? That's what we're going to see. Now let's move on. Internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group are correlated with a state of hostility toward out-group, which are often perceived as subhuman. The mistake a lot of students will make here is they read this entire thing and they said, oh my god, this is too difficult. So all of you who felt this is very complex, this passage is very complex, it's because you read this entire thing in one stretch. What you really should be doing is breaking it down and summarizing it in your own words. It's kind of complex, right? It's hard to keep in your mind. That's why you summarize. So let's break it down. Internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group. Let's pause here. If you had to summarize this in your own words, internal cohesion till devotion to the in-group, what will you say in your own words? Put it in one short and succinct sentence for me. Positive attributes, positive definition. You guys are getting it, right? Some kind of a positive feeling towards the in-group, biasness towards the in-group. You're right. Some kind of a positive sentiment towards the in-group. That is what you should be getting from this. Now let's move on. You just summarize it in your own words. Are correlated with. What exactly is a correlation? Are correlated with is a keyword. What do you mean by are correlated with? What does that tell you? Connection. There is some relation. We do not know what exactly that relation is. It could be an inverse relation also, but there is some connection or relation between some positive feeling towards your in-group and a state of hostility towards out-group. State of hostility fundamentally is negative, right? So what the author has told you so far is, in this particular definition of ethnocentrism, positive feeling towards in-group is connected in some way to negative feeling towards out-group. Is that clear? See how just by breaking down we are able to extract a very interesting and easy summary. Now let's move on. Which. One tip, whenever you see words like which, this, that, is it, you always ask the question, what is it referring to? Here it is asking about outgroups. Outgroups which are often perceived as subhuman. The word subhuman tells me something else. It tells me that you're not talking about a group of potatoes, you're talking about a group of human beings. Simple. So fundamentally, ethnocentrism, at least this one definition of ethnocentrism, not necessarily the author's definition, says that it's some kind of a difference between in-group and out-group, where some positive feeling towards in-group is somehow connected with some negative feeling towards out-group. This out-group is considered as subhuman and or evil, technically. This is what you should be able to extract. So if you have done this well, think about everything we did. We understood firstly that, hey, one definition means not necessarily the author's definition. It also told us that there's probably more than one definition. We also understood the author's view about this one particular definition. It's not the author's view on ethnocentrism, it's the author's view on this one definition of EC. According to the author, this one definition is exaggerated, boss. It's a little extreme, it's out there. It's not your regular accepted kind of definition. That's what you should get. And then What exactly is the definition telling us? Love for your own people is correlated with hate for outside people. You can call it love, you can call it positive feeling. As long as you get the sentiment, you're good. The question I have for you is, how many of you were able to get all these points? How many of you were not able to get all these points? So let me put that to a vote. How many of you were not able to understand any of these points? So I've listed down 3 points here, right? If you got all, you are at a very, very high level right now. But otherwise, this is actually telling you what you need to do. If you missed out on one, that means you did not focus on that one definition and understand what that meant. If you missed out on 2, you did not focus on bordering on the extreme. If you missed out on 3, you were not able to summarize that. You got lost in that long, complicated text and you did not properly summarize that. It's as simple as that. So let me broadcast the results now. Everybody has around 30% of you got all, which I'm very, very happy to see. Usually I see a lesser percentage there, but so I'm very happy to see this batch is a little on the smarter side, I suppose. But for everybody else, you can see where you can build more value in this entire process. So, any learning so far? What I want you to take away is, just by focusing on sentence structure, you can actually focusing on sentence structure, doing keywords, drawing those inferences, summarizing, you can do a lot. So let's look at the actual passage right now, question right now. Let me broadcast the results, how you guys performed. So 48% of the batch got the right answer. Option D is the correct answer. So now let's understand each and every option. Option A says to criticize a concept that encourages hostility towards people not belonging to the same group. By the way, in all this, we'll also be giving you the slides anyway. In all these points, whatever you see in red is the reason why something is wrong. Okay. So option A says to criticize a concept. Remember, the author has only criticized that one particular definition of EC. He says that definition is a little exaggerated. He has not criticized EC itself. So to criticize a concept is not actually correct. Exactly, there was no criticism. And the second point is, can you say it encourages hostility? No, all we know is, as per this one definition, positive feeling towards in-group is correlated with negative feeling towards out-group. We don't know if EC is encouraging some negative feeling. We don't know that. That's not given. So is it clear? 11% of the students chose option A. Is it clear why option A is not the right answer? 2 reasons why. Both criticize and encourages, both are incorrect. Perfect. I like to see those yeses. Now let's look at option B. And option B was also somewhat popular. 20% of the batch chose, and as one of the students rightly pointed out, there is no evaluation happening. To evaluate fundamentally means to assess. If I'm evaluating artificial intelligence, that means I'm assessing artificial intelligence. What do I mean by assessing artificial intelligence? I look at the pros and the cons. That's how you typically assess something. A pro of artificial intelligence is it is bringing in very disruptive technologies that are going to make human life much better. The quality of human life is going to be much better. The con of artificial intelligence is, hey, it's going to really impact the job economy. People are going to lose jobs because of AI. So that's an evaluation. You consider the pros and cons and assess something. Is that happening here? Absolutely not, right? There is no evaluation happening in this. The author has not considered the pros and cons of ethnocentrism and assessed it. So that's the first reason this is wrong. The second reason this is wrong is, it's not really talking about the features. All you're given is one particular definition. That also is an exaggerated definition. Definition is not the same as features. The definition of a mobile phone is not the same as features of the mobile phone. What you're given is definition. You're not given any features. So there's a difference there, which is why option B is also wrong. Hope this is clear. For those of you who chose option B, some clarity coming through in this. Perfect. Now let's look at option C. To define the concept of EC. Option C, again, 20% of you chose this. To define the concept of EC, which leads to hierarchy. Exactly, he didn't define. Some of you have chosen this because you thought one definition of EC means the author is defining. That's the difference. The author has not defined. The author has presented one definition of EC, not necessarily the definition of EC. So define the concept of EC? Not really. He's not done that. And do we know anything about hierarchy among social groups? Absolutely not. There's no mention of hierarchy. Just because You have a positive feeling towards in-group and negative feeling towards out-group. You cannot just infer hierarchy from there. We'll get into how the author would define something. I'll show you. In the next passage, we're going to see that. That's a good question. Just hold on to your horses. We're going to discuss that. Now, to introduce the concept of EC by presenting a view on it. This is, of course, the correct answer because notice the way it's worded. Not presenting his view or her view or their view. It's by presenting a view. It's presenting one definition, not necessarily the definition the author himself or herself agrees with. And you see, introducing you, imagine I'm the author and imagine you are the reader. By reading this passage, did you get introduced to the concept of ethnocentrism? Yes, you did. I did not give you the actual accepted worldwide definition, but I still introduced you to the concept of EC. How did I do that? By presenting one particular definition of EC. Is this clear? Option D, 48% of you chose this, but for those of you who are not clear about why option D is the right answer, is this coming through? A quick example for this is if you come to my house for a party tomorrow night and I introduce you to a friend of mine. I'm just introducing you to this particular friend. I'm not telling you my opinion of this person. He might be a good person, he might be a very bad person. I'm not telling you that. I don't have to present my view to introduce something or someone. That's the core point for me. Okay? There is no features in option B. It's not repeat various features. The point is the passage is only giving you a definition. The definition of a mobile phone is not the same as features of the mobile phone, right? How can you say features are being presented? The passage is not really got into features. That's the point. So, key learnings from this particular question. You would have observed all this right now. The first thing, you do not need to be an English scholar. Remember, the sentence was extremely complex. Some of you would have noticed that this entire passage is only one sentence. It's a very complex sentence. How do we do it? By breaking it down into manageable chunks. Is that clear? The second part, some of us may still not know what schismatic is, but did that stop you from solving the question? That's what I wanted to take away. No, I don't know what schismatic means, but it did not make any difference. I was still able to solve that question perfectly well. Why is this? Why am I telling you that these kind of complex words do not matter? Because unlike JRE, GMAT is not intended as a test of your vocabulary. You're not going to be mugging up words and improving your vocabulary for GMAT. It's a test of your logical ability. It's not intended as a vocabulary test, which is why you will always have unfamiliar words, but you should trust the test maker. If the word is really important, the author will give us some way to infer the meaning of that. That's the fundamental aspect. Also remember, very important, how many of you come from the background where you know what ethnocentrism is? Is this topic familiar to you? How many of you have that aspect that, hey, I know exactly what this topic is all about? Look at the number of no's. For most of us, this is a completely alien topic, right? But did it matter? This is what I mean by I don't care about the topic. Whatever the topic, I'm going to immerse myself. What did we do? We immersed ourselves into it. We broke down sentences. We went slowly and methodologically, and that's what helped us. EC is not a topic I know. I don't come from the background. It didn't matter at all. We still cracked this fantastic passage. What you actually need, this kind of genuine 100% immersion. We didn't go in with this mindset that, oh my god, this topic is not something I know. We went in with the mindset of cracking it. Immersion, reading with intent. You saw how we drew inferences one small. Bordering on the extreme told us something. One definition told us something. By focusing on those things, you can extract everything from even a passage that looks completely difficult. So break down big sentences, focus on keywords, summarize every few lines. Whenever you get stuck, whenever you feel that what you read did not make sense, you should summarize in your own words. Do that and RC is going to really be much easier than you think. So now who's ready for the next passage? The test is right now. I want you guys to apply everything that you've learned. So who's ready for passage 2? Let's hear a few yeses. Around 140 of you here. Good, fantastic. So same approach. Once you're done reading the passage, click on done reading. Then I'm going to introduce the question. Please note, this question is not main point. This is an inference question. Okay, here you go. All right, I can see that a lot of you are done reading this, so I'm gonna take away this poll and I'm gonna introduce the question. So remember guys, this is an inference question. Fundamentally, based on the passage, what can you infer to be true? Okay, so here you go. Question is right here. The poll is here. Let me, clear all the answers. Please click on still solving if you have not done it already. Just do it now. All right, folks, let's take another 15 seconds and then we'll start discussing this one as well. All right, so last 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and let me end this poll. All right, so just like the last question, there's a fairly even mix of answer choices. So we're going to have some fun with this. So let's get some feedback. On the short answer pod, how did you find this particular passage? And how was it compared to the last passage? Anything you could apply? Easy, medium, good, relatively easy, good, interesting. Simple compared to the last. All right. All right, let me ask another question. How many of you were able to apply some of the things that we saw? You know, going slow, breaking down sentences, focusing on keywords. Good. Those of you are saying that, let's hope. I think you're learning. That's great. So let's start discussing this passage. And again, pay close attention to how we are going to do this. But before that, we need to take a small detour, and it's kind of important. Let's hide this. Look at the question on the screen. Imagine I'm the author, all right? Imagine that I'm the author and I'm making the statement. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of people. Now the question I have for you is this one. What can you infer based on the statement that's mentioned here? And I brought in the poll for this. Alright, so let me broadcast the results. Around 70% of you believe that only statement 1 can be inferred. That means around 33% of you believe that either only statement 2 can be inferred or both can be inferred. So 70% of you are correct. The reality is, when you say what can be inferred from this particular statement, only statement 1 can be inferred. And the reason for that is this very important keyword, considered to have. The question you have to ask is, hey, I'm as the author, I'm telling you the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of people. The question you should ask, who is doing this consideration? Can you be sure the author also considers blue to have a soothing effect? When you just say considered to have, it could be so many other people. How do you know for sure it is the author also? That's the fundamental point here that I want you to take away. When you say color blue is considered to have, who is doing this consideration? Is it necessarily the author also? Not necessary. You cannot be 100% sure. Maybe the author also considers blue to have a soothing effect, maybe not. The best you can infer from the statement is, hey, at least there are some people who exist who believe that blue has a soothing effect on the moods of people. We cannot be 100% sure the author believes this. Is this point clear? This is a very important point. You will see why this is definitely related to what we are going to do in the passage. Exactly. Now the thing is, some of you might ask me, so if I am the author, if I want to tell you that blue has a soothing effect, if I want to communicate to you that, hey, blue indeed has a soothing effect as per me, then I would actually communicate it this way. Here there is no doubt. The author is telling you as a fact that the color blue has a soothing effect on the moods of people. Here there is no doubt. In the previous sentence, we don't know who's doing that consideration. So do you see the difference? In this statement, you can be sure that you can, as an inference, you can state that as per the color blue has a soothing inference, as has a soothing effect on the moods of people. If this is clear, now let's come to the passage, because we have the exact same thing right here in this passage. Some of you went for an incorrect option choice precisely because of this. You did not focus on deemed to be, which is fundamentally the same as considered to be, right? Think about it. Some of you definitely fell for this particular trap of not figuring out that, hey, EC ethnocentrism it's not necessary that the author believes it's connected with xenophobia. Some people believe, we don't know if the author believes, and that's a key point. So let's analyze this passage now, slowly, the same way as earlier. Ethnocentrism, let's call it EC, and its canonical variance. Now again, you have this sort of unfamiliar word. Not everybody may know what canonical means. It means identical, but forget it, even if you don't know. Ethnocentrism and its variants are deemed to be or considered to be intimately connected with something called xenophobia. Or in other words, there are some people at least who believe that EC and XP are intimately connected. That's the first piece. Everybody with me so far? Good to see that some of you are already figured out the correct answer now. E is the correct answer, by the way. So now let's go on. So as per some people, EC and XP are intimately connected. Then you have xenophobia, comma, and then you have a complex attitude system, come sentiment structure, involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien, and everything that the stranger or alien represents. All right, very complicated. So what did I say in the last passage? What did I say you should do when you read something that does not seem to make sense at the first go? What is it that you should do? Cut the sentence. What else? There's something else also I very, very specifically told. How do you understand it? Summarize. Absolutely, summarize. So who can tell me in their own words what is the meaning of what you just read? What is complex attitude system, sentiment structure, etc., etc.? Stop reading further and summarize. Fantastic. The difference is he or she who summarizes this in their own words before reading the next, they have some hope of understanding this passage. Otherwise, you're truly lost. So who can give me the summary of this right now? Definition of xenophobia, absolutely. So definition of xenophobia is what it is. Can somebody also summarize what it says? I can see that. Negative feelings towards the stranger, dislike towards a stranger or strange. So some of you are getting this. In fact, a lot of you are getting this now. So firstly, what exactly is this? You guys told me correctly it is the definition of xenophobia. Then I asked you what does it exactly say? Some of you summarized it and correctly told me some kind of a negative feeling or hatred towards the alien or the strange, right? I had this on my slide, but I was very confident that at least some of you will get the correct answer here. So you guys essentially summarized this very complicated definition and told me some kind of negative feeling or hatred towards the alien or the strange. Everybody with me so far, I hope, because now I'm going to ask a very important question. You guys told me that this is the definition of XP. The question is, does the author agree with this definition? Do you know that? or does the author not agree with this definition? Is this you understood that it's a definition of XP, but is it a definition that the author agrees with, or we don't know? Yes. Again, this is the point a lot of students have a bit of confusion with. In reality, those of you who said yes, this is something that the author definitely agrees with, you guys are correct. Why do I say that? Look at the way the sentence is written. Unlike the last passage, it's not telling us that xenophobia, which is considered to be a complex attitude system, there you're not sure if it's one definition of which, or it's either saying one definition of which is a complex attitude system. There you're not sure if it is the definition, or if I say xenophobia, which is considered to be a complex attitude system, you do not know. Here all you have is xenophobia, comma, and then the author actually presents this as a fact. I'll give you an example to make this very, very clear. All right. And where is it? Yeah, here it is. Just one sec. This should be very clear once we go through these examples. Look at the first sentence. Verbo is considered a unicorn, or considered to be a unicorn, comma, a company with $1 billion valuation. So what is up for debate? What we don't know whether the author believes in or not is whether Verbo is a unicorn. It's considered to be a unicorn. We don't know whether the author believes it's a unicorn or not. But what follows unicorn? A company with $1 billion valuation. Is it up for debate whether a unicorn is a company with $1 billion valuation? Isn't the author just stating it as a fact here to let us know what exactly a unicorn is? Is this concept coming through? Author does not support does not mean he's against. It depends. The debate is whether Verbo is a unicorn or not. The debate is not whether a unicorn is a company with $1 billion or not. Do you see the difference? Look at the second example also. Google, an internet company, is considered a good buy. What is up for debate? What is up for debate of whether the author agrees with or not is whether Google is considered a good buy. That we don't know. Maybe as per the author, Google is not really a good buy. But whether Google is an internet company or not, is that up for debate? No. The author has presented that as a fact. So do you see why what follows at comma is just as the author presenting that as a fact? Is that coming through now? This is very, very important, because this is a simple sentence. Through the simple sentence, if you understand this, it's the very same thing that's happening here. Xenophobia, comma, a complex attitude system essentially means hatred for aliens. This is the author giving us the definition of xenophobia as a fact for us to understand. If the author wanted to tell us that this is not necessarily his or her definition, he would have said connected with xenophobia, which is considered to be a complex attitude. Then you're not sure. Very, very important. So now you know something here. This is a fact which the author agrees with. Now let's move on. Some socio-cultural anthropologists even considered XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. This is where quite a few of you lost the plot because you could not understand this. Let me illustrate this again. Firstly, remember, see how the author is making sure you know when it is not necessarily him or her. Some socio-cultural anthropologists, boss, not necessarily me. Some socio-cultural anthropologists even considered XP and EC to be opposite sides of the same coin. Some of you would have seen the word xenophobia, ethnocentrism, and opposite and assumed that the author is saying that means XP and EC are opposite. How many of you fell for this trap, thinking that XP and EC are opposite because of the word opposite there? If you didn't fall for it, I'm very, very happy. Because think about opposite sides of the same coin. When you have a coin, say this is a coin. If you have a head, when you take a coin, if you just take a coin and look at it, by definition, you will have a head, you will also have a tail. Or in other words, one cannot exist without the other. This is what we call as coexistence. If you take a typical coin, there will be a head, there will also be a tail. You cannot have one without the other. That's the point. Exactly. Now look at this keyword even. I don't know how many of you focused on even, but it's a very important keyword. What does even mean here? If I ask you the question, why did the author put even here? What is it that he or she is trying to tell you? Strengthen, extend, yes. not add another viewpoint, but you're taking it to that next extent. So all of you are staying strength and extent, you're on the right track to magnify, emphasize, absolutely. So you guys are getting it. This is a word that you know, it's a keyword, it's a word that you and I are familiar with. Typically when you're reading it, some of you may not be focusing on it. All I'm asking you to do is focus on it to understand why it is there, because that unlocks meaning. What do I mean by that? Now look at even. First, in the first sentence, the author told you, hey, some people believe EC and XP are intimately connected, pretty strongly connected. In the second sentence, the author is essentially telling you, hey, it's not just intimately connected, it is so strongly connected as per these people that they are practically opposite sides of the same coin. They are so strongly connected that they coexist. One cannot exist without the other. That level of connection is there, magnifying that link to the next level. That is what even is doing there. When you see the word even, you should be able to link this first line and the second line, this first part and the second part. If you're doing that, congrats, that's how you should be doing RC. Is this clear? And I'll give you an example for even as well to make it a little more clear. For those of you who are a little on the fence about this even, it seems a little new, right? For some of you. So let's take an example for even. So this is a basketball example for those of you who played basketball. Shaq was the most dominant basketball player of his time. Some analysts even consider him to be the most dominant player of all time. Exactly the same. I'm adding emphasis. I'm taking it to that next level. Shaq is the most dominant player of this time. That's not up for debate. But there are some people who say he's not just the most dominant player of his time. He is the most dominant player of all time. Taking it to that next level. It's not also, taking it to that next level. So is the point of even very clear? If you pair even along with not, you can also go the other way. GDP is increasingly a poor measure of prosperity. It is so bad that it's not even a reliable gauge of production. So that you can work the other way also by putting a not. So is this concept clear? If this is clear, then you've practically unlocked the passage just by, no, even always does not have that intention. For all you know, even could be used as in even odd numbers. You have to look at the passage and understand the usage that's happening. That's where our intelligence comes in. But again, just by focusing on that, you're able to unlock all this. So first the author says, hey, there are some people who believe that EC and XP are intimately connected. Then there are these anthropologists who say that they're not just intimately connected, they are so strongly connected that they're practically opposite sides of the same coin. They're so strongly connected that you cannot have one without the other. Coexistence. Now let's move on. If this is clear, now let's move on. But again, a keyword, which means but, just like however, indicates that a contrast is coming in. So even before I read this, I know what is going to follow. But implies that, hey, some people believe that they're so strongly connected they're practically coexisting, but it's not going to be that much of a connection also. That's what, right? You can even predict it before you read the words. But a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. Yet again, notice a few voices. The author is again letting you know this is not necessarily him or her. Some random third party, a few voices are saying that it's not necessarily the case. So we have unlocked everything there's to unlock in this passage. We've extracted everything. So fundamentally, these are the points that you should have got. There are 4 points here that you should have got. Firstly, the author has defined XP and he's given us the definition of XP as a fact. That's point number 1. Point number 2, as per some people, EC and XP are intimately, strongly connected. Then, as per some other anthropologist experts, they are not just strongly connected, they are so strongly connected that they practically coexist. You cannot have one without the other, that level of connection. And then there are some other people who say that it's not that strong also. Everybody with me so far in terms of understanding this? Once this is clear, we are going to run through the options very, very fast. Perfect. And again, I'm going to ask you the same question as I asked you in the last passage. How many of you were able to get all this? How many of you were not able to get all this? This is where your learning comes in. What is it that you got? What is it that you're not able to get out of these 4 statements? Let me broadcast the results. I am practically stoked to see that 50% of the batch has understood this. So there's an improvement from the last, the way I see it, there's an improvement from the last question. So this is fantastic to see. For those of you who are not able to get each and every statement, analyze this when you get the slides as well. You can go through this and see what is it that you missed. If you missed out on one, you did not summarize, you did not understand that XP is fundamentally hatred for the alien. If you were not able to get two, you did not figure out it's some people who considered it's closely connected, not necessarily the author. If you were not able to get three, what does it mean? You got confused by opposite sides of the same coin and you didn't understand the power of that even. And if you didn't understand four, that's just the last portion that you probably missed out on. So very, very granular learnings on where you're correct and where you're not correct. So again, the one thing I really want you to take away is how to really extract information by using these strategies. Now, let's talk about, and this is a question that's very important to address because I'm sure a lot of us have some misconceptions about inferences on the GMAT, okay? So, a lot of us believe that an inference has to be a logically deduced new point. It cannot be the same point. It has to be something new that's not there in the passage. How many of you believe this to be true? That the inference has to be something that you logically deduce. It cannot be something that's already there. Yes, there are quite a few of us who have this particular idea. See, it's not wrong, but as far as the GMAT is concerned, take it from me right here. As far as the GMAT is concerned, both in CR and in RC, the definition of inference is what is definitely 100% true if your given information is considered to be true. In other words, if your passage information is true, what can you say is definitely true? It's as simple as that, nothing else. Which means if you go by this definition, even if I just take information from the passage and restate it, that's also correct, right? It's also true. Even though it's not a new logical point, it is also true. Some of you would have done everything right, but would have rejected option E because you thought this could not, a restatement of the given information cannot be an inference. But take it from me, both in CR and RC, you can have a restatement of the given information as a valid inference. You do not see this very often. In 95% of cases in CR, you do not see this. In RC, on the other hand, it is somewhat popular. It has to be logical. It cannot be, the author is not going to believe anything illogical. I'm going to address that point as well. It cannot be any lay party's opinion. It has to be something the author believes in. I'm coming to that as well. So, first aspect, an inference can be a restatement of given information. Second aspect, when you say according to the passage what can be inferred, the passage is written by the author. The author is the king or queen of this particular passage. If he or she believes in it, only then can be a valid inference. It has to be something that you know the author believes to be true. Otherwise, it's not a valid inference. What I mean by that is, some people considered EC and XP to be intimately connected. That's just some people. You do not know 100% that the author believes that. So you cannot say from the passage that the author believes EC and XP are intimately connected. Is this point coming through? This is very important. Some of you would have chosen the wrong answer because of this. It has to be from the point of view of the author. Perfect. The last point is, the author is believed to be and assumed to be a logical and sensible person, which means if the author has in the passage given to us something as, a fact, like for example, that definition of EC, or the definition of XP, he's given that definition as the definition for us as a fact. Author is a sensible person. If he's given something as a fact, by definition, it means he believes it is true. And if it is true, it is a valid inference. If it is a fact, the author is a logical person. He believes it to be true. If it is true, it is considered to be a valid inference. Is this clear? So if all these aspects about inference are clear, now you know why only one option is correct. So let's look at each and every option. Okay. Let's look at option A. XP and EC are different facets of the same concept, or in other words, opposite sides of the same coin. Same concept, different sides. Same coin, opposite sides, different sides. Who is saying this? Some socio-cultural anthropologists are saying this. Does the author say this? No. Let me bring back the poll so that you guys can see how we performed in this as a group. Let's do that. Let me broadcast the results so that this is visible. Perfect. So now it should be visible to you as well. 28% of the batch chose option A. 28% believed XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. Inference that is a definition of inference. It is true, 100% true, based on what based on the passage information. Okay, so is it clear to everybody why option A is not the correct answer? Because this is not necessarily the view of the author. This is the view of some socio-cultural anthropologists. Simple. Perfect. It has to be true from the author's view. If you do not know for sure if the author agrees with it, it cannot be a valid inference. Simple. Let's look at option B. 35% chose option B. The canonical variants of EC are closely connected with xenophobia. Everybody who chose option B, this is where you faltered. You do not understand the importance of deemed to be or considered to be. And maybe because you do not understand option E can be valid, then you went back to this as a best fit. But in reality, yes, considered to be. You do not know if the author also considers it that way. That's the important point. See, good question. Will the question always have the word author mentioned in inference question? Not necessarily. It could be according to the passage. The author has written the passage. So if it is telling about what can be inferred from the passage, what can be inferred from the information given, it's always the author view. Unless it's explicitly mentioned that you're looking for a scientist inference or a scholar's inference, some other third party mentioned in the passage, unless the question itself mentions that you're looking for somebody else's inference, the underlying thought process is it's the author's. What is it that the author believes? Good question. So deemed to be fundamentally means you do not know who deems this to be that way. Some people believe that EC and XP are connected. You don't know who believes that. May not necessarily the author. That's the fundamental point. So option B is wrong because this is a deemed opinion, not necessarily the author's opinion. Let's talk about option C. See, option C is not chosen by a lot of people, but the reason is a lot of you might have believed that as per the passage EC and XP are connected, and therefore option C is wrong. But the real reason is we actually don't know whether they're connected. The author may believe they're connected, the author may believe they're not connected. We have no idea, and that's a real reason why you should reject option C. I hope that is coming through. Now let's talk about option D. Option D is the easiest to eliminate option because it talks about something called causality, which is not discussed anywhere in the passage. You do not know whether EC caused XP or whether XP caused EC. Nothing is mentioned in the passage. So there is no way you should be choosing option D. Which brings us to the only option here, which is something you can say the author will believe in. Why is it that the author believes in this? Because as we understood, this is the definition of XP provided by the author to us as a fact. Author is considered to be a logical person if he or she is giving something as a fact, which means he believes that to be true. If that is believed to be true, it is a valid inference. So, is this clear to everybody? Only 25% of us chose option E. Perfect. Good. So, just to revisit what we learned from everything here. Again, just like ethnocentrism, xenophobia is also something that most of us are not really aware of, or most of us do not really know in detail in terms of concept. Even if you know the term, it does not matter. Any topic, any length, any complexity, complicated words, I don't care. You should also not care. Complicated sentence, we'll break it down and understand it. That's it. Nothing else matters. Break down big sentences, read slowly. Remember, the way we connected that line 1 to line 2, just by the keyword even, we were able to understand what the author has done. Line 1 told us something. Based on even, we were able to say, oh, this is the nature of the relationship that the author is telling us. That level of analysis has to happen in your brain as you're reading these passages. Focusing on those keywords. Deemed to be, everybody who fell for that option B is because of deemed to be. If you understood even, you unlock the meaning of the passage. Summarize. Your actual answer in this case was the summary. So any of you who just ran through that definition without understanding what that definition actually says, you wouldn't even understand what option E is talking about. So very important learnings for you. With that, I will be handing over the baton to Shraddha. And again, I'm going to put this link out here for a while for any of you who want to look at how to build a study plan with us. Please check out this link. I hope this point.
Thank you, Harsha. That was very useful insights that we got into how to read a passage and how to interpret the information that we get from the passage. Okay, before I begin, I would just like to take a quick pulse of the class. Basically, I just want to make sure if I'm audible or not. So here, let me quickly clear all the answers. Am I audible? All right, I see a lot of positives trickling in through. Okay, so with that, now what we are going to do is we are going to look at a full-length official passage. It's an official passage. So I mean, the screen says that you will take about 4 minutes to read it, but basically you will be setting the pace for yourself. So I'll first show you the passage, and then there are 5 questions related to that passage. So you will solve all those 5 passages in the very same way in which you understood the first 2 passages and how to come to the correct answer. And then we will discuss the passage and the questions. Okay, so I'm going to reshuffle the screen a little bit, and I'm going to bring in, so on your screen I have, okay, I'm bringing the study plan in towards the end. Thank you so much for those of you who already clicked on still solving, because by the time, I mean, I guess you now understand the drill of the session. All right. So please click on still solving. I have a good number of students in the class yet, so I would want most of you to participate. Basically, it is time to put into application what you have learned so far, so don't shy away from trying your hands on this official passage, which is considered to be a 700 plus passage. So a few more votes for still solving so that I know that you are here with me. All right. All right. So let's move on. Here is the passage on the screen. I'll bring up a poll to ask if you're done reading. If I see that 80% of the class is done reading, then I will start showing you the questions. Okay, so all the very best. Read properly. Again, immerse yourself and pay attention to the keywords, and do not forget to summarize. Okay. All right, so those who are done reading the passage, could you please click on yes if you have not done it so? I have upwards of 120 students in 20 attendees. I'll have to, you know, let's work towards everybody's interest. Okay, I think we'll take another 30 seconds and then I'll show you the passage. Sorry, the first question. All right, I'm bringing in the poll for the first question. Those who have not put in your responses as of yet, could you please click on still solving? In the meantime, I'm going to also bring the passage on the screen so that you can take a look at the passage when you are solving the question. And here is the passage. It is a scrollable pod. You can always scroll up and down to get to the... Let me just move this out of your way. We can bring it later. Okay, so here is the passage and you can scroll it up and down. And let's get towards our first question. That's the first question, which reads, the passage is primarily concerned with... I'm reading out just the first few words just to make sure that all of you are looking at the correct passage, because for some of you, the screen may take a few seconds to settle down. So that's our first question. All the best. All right, we'll take 10 seconds to finish this up and then we'll move on to our second question. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, those who are yet to select an answer choice, just make any choice and let's move on. And here I end the poll. All right, bringing in the poll for question number 2. If you could do the honors by clicking on still solving, please. Still solving, I've changed the poll. This is the poll for question number 2. This is the poll for question number 2. You will see question number 2 once I've gotten good number of responses for still solving. Okay, let's move on. Let's take a look at question 2 here. Which of the following can be inferred? So now this is our inference question. We've already gone deeper into how to figure out inference. So keep all those points in mind and then select your answer. Okay, all the best. All right, last 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. You guys are doing great. Trust me on this and keep this momentum going. I'm ending the poll here, bringing in the poll for our third question. On your screen, you see question number 2, but here now the poll is for third question. So I want all of you to click on still solving once again. Still solving, please click on still solving. There we go. Got good number of votes there. Let's move on to question number 3. It can be inferred from the passage. So another inference question. Last 10 seconds before we move to question 4. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, here we go. Closing the poll. You guys are doing just so good. All right. Bringing in the poll for our fourth question, which is the second last question. Let's get on to that still solving. Few more. All right. Here is question number 4. The author mentions patients' ages. That is what our question number 4 is. All the best. All right, last 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, let's end the poll here. And now we come to the very last question of this passage. This could be a little tricky, so deal with it carefully. That's what I would say. Last question. Let's get to a few more still solving. All right, here is the very last question for this session. According to the passage, which of the following describes? That's our last question. All the best. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, so 10 seconds are over. I counted it silently because many of you said, okay, do it slowly. All right, so I am closing the poll here. All right, I'm hiding the polls for now. We will discuss them when we get to them. But before that, I want to hear from you as to what are your views on this passage. And I'm just trying to hear. Oops. I'm trying to get the poll, my short answer poll back here. So what are your views on this passage? Did you like it? Was it difficult? Was it easy? Maybe the passage was easy, but the questions were complicated, or the answer choices were difficult to understand. Making choices was difficult. How would you rate it? Thank you, Shashi, for letting me know about that. My mic was pretty far away from my mouth, so yeah. I think I can do it well. Easy passage, tricky questions, easier to understand than most other passages. Of course, because it had more context and something probably most of us could relate to. Saw this question in OG, medium difficulty. Answer choices were somewhat difficult to eliminate. I know the passage, and even though I found it difficult, okay, the passage was easy to understand, but some of the questions were a bit confusing. And this is what I feel about this passage also, that the passage is fine. The passage is, you know, not too difficult to understand, but the questions are complicated because of the way they are worded, and then the answer choices are really tricky. And we'll talk about all those snares that we see in the answer choices. So let's move on. We are going to breeze through the analysis because I understand that most of you understand the passage already. So I'm just going to get my pen here, and we are saying that Frazier and Mutzeler assert that medical research could be improved by a move toward larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. And I know that this passage is talking about the suggestion made by two people, Frazier and Mosteller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to abbreviate this to F and M. Right? So I'm just going to call them F and M. And what struck me in the very beginning of this sentence is the word assert. The author does not use that they suggest or they propose or they say or they put forward. The word is assert, which means that there's a lot of emphasis or there is a lot of conviction in which they present something. All right. And when we move on in the sentence, we see that F&M's suggestion is two-pronged. They ask to make the clinical trials larger, and then they also say that let's make it simpler. And that's where I stop after reading my first sentence in the passage. And what got me pegged to this passage, or what is the point that I found out for myself to immerse in the passage, is that, hey, if the clinical trials are made larger, how can they be made simpler at the same time? So I wanted to know about that, and then that gave me that impetus to read the entire passage. So I'm just talking about, you know, how you can immerse yourself into reading the passage. You can just find a point of interest for yourself to tell yourself that, hey, let's read this passage. Probably it's going to be interesting. Okay. So with that thing, then we read on. Currently, that's my keyword here. Currently, that means right now. So in this sentence, the author presents how the clinical trials are done now. Researchers collect far more background information on patients than is strictly required for their trial. So we know that more than is presenting a comparison. So what is the comparison? The comparison is they collect far more data than are really required, or than is really required. And then between these two long dashes, we see another comparison coming up: substantially more than hospitals collect. Now, what is this comparison doing here at this juncture in the passage? Really, with this, I mean, we don't know how much, I mean, given the fact we really cannot say how much information is collected by hospitals, but by plugging in this comparison, the author just wants to tell us that, hey, these clinical trials collect a lot more data. They collect a huge amount of data. It's really humongous. That's the only point that the author wants to bring forth by putting this comparison into the passage here, right? Just get to understand that current clinical trials collect a lot of data thereby. And what is the result? So here we are talking about cause and effect. What is the cause? The cause is that researchers collect far more data. And what is the effect of that cause? The effect is that escalating costs of data collection, storage, and analysis. So this is what the passage is saying. The cause is they collect a lot of data. As a result, what happens? The costs of data collection, data storage, and analysis go up. Although I again hit my another keyword, which is now going to present a contrasting information. What is that? Although limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts relevant to a study, F&M contend that such risk, never entirely eliminable from research, would still be small in most studies. So here somebody may pose an objection to F&M's suggestion that, hey, you are asking us not to collect so much data. Is that what you're talking about? If you're talking about that, then don't you think that if we limit the amount of data that we'll collect, we will run into the risk of not considering certain variables that could be important for that particular trial? So F&M are ready with their answers to this argument as well, and that's why it comes from assert. They are 100% sure of what they are saying. So what is their reply? They say that that kind of a risk, that you are going to collect everything absolutely required for that particular clinical trial, that particular thing is never going to happen, because no matter how much data you collect, there could be something that you might miss for that data. But there is a but to that. What they say is that that risk is very, very minimal. That risk is very, very minimal. Then they substantiate their point by saying that only in research or on entirely new treatments and unexpected variables likely to arise. So F&M say that, hey, if there is a particular disease that has never been researched before, for example, we could talk about corona, probably this was not researched before, but if coronavirus is to be studied or clinical trials needed to be done on that, maybe then if it is absolutely a new thing, okay, incorporate a lot of data. But if you're doing a second phase of research on an already researched treatment or already researched disease, then in that case, you can very safely bring down the number of variables or information that you collect. So if I were to, oops, sorry about that. So in this passage, we are really talking about this simpler aspect of the suggestion by F&M. What are they saying? Hey, let's reduce the number of information or reduce the amount of information collected for these clinical trials. And I hope that all of you were able to relate this particular paragraph to this point, because this RC is all about understanding or decoding these interconnection, these relationship among different information presented in the passage. And that is what we need to keep our focus on all the time as when we are reading the passage. Moving on to, so here is the passage analysis. The passage starts with the suggestion made by F&M, and then the present way of doing clinical trials, the effect of it, and then an argument to oppose F&M, but F&M have an answer to that also, and then it says that it is still okay to reduce the amount of information. Moving forward, F&M propose not only, our typical SC structure over here. We know that when we see not only in the passage or in a sentence, we will also come about but also, which is definitely present here. So here the author is talking about two aspects of the same topic being discussed. So what F&M is saying, that not only that researchers limit data collection on individual patients, so this is about that making it simpler part, which we have already read in the first paragraph, that okay, make it simpler. That's their first suggestion. The second suggestion is that researchers enroll more patients in clinical trials. So that is, make your clinical trials larger. When the author said, when F&M said that in the first paragraph, what they really meant to say is that take in more patients in your clinical trials. And what will be the result of that? This thereby is going to tell us the result would be obtaining a more representative sample of the total population with the disease under study. At this point in the passage, we can make an assumption. The assumption that we can the inference, not assumption, I'm sorry about that. The inference that we make here is that, well, author is saying that if you take more people into your clinical trials, the data that you will obtain will be more representative. That means that the way the clinical trials are done today, the results are not representative. That's a very clear inference that we can draw, and this inference is also supported by the information that we are going to read. Often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments beside those being studied. A treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions can then be evaluated under normal conditions. In this part of the passage, it is very, very important that you understood the meaning suggested or implied by ideal conditions and normal conditions. So what is ideal conditions? Anybody would like to take a guess? Short answer poll, please. Anybody? Patients with no other okay. Everything you... Okay. So, yes, ideal condition is the best case scenario. Why? Because it is suggested that the current trials, they only study those people, they only incorporate those people in their studies that are those who suffer only from that particular disease at that point in time. Now, if we come to think about it, does it really happen that at one point in time we are only suffering from just one ailment? I mean, I'm not saying that that is not possible, but the possibility is very, very bleak because we ourselves do not know what's going on inside our bodies, right? So what F&M is saying, that rather than just singling out those people who have only that particular ailment that you are studying, incorporate more people. Why? What will be the result of that? The result of that will be that when you come up with a treatment for that particular disease, after studying all these people in normal condition, that means they had something else going on, the treatment that you will be able to come out with, you will be able to evaluate it, the treatment that you came up before, just by studying that particular disease, you can evaluate the efficacy of that treatment on people of various other on people with various other diseases. So the sample that you will get, it will be more representative, that can be it will prove the efficacy of the treatment done by the clinical trials. Okay, so this is what is the meaning of ideal conditions and normal conditions. So basically in this paragraph we see that the second part of the proposal is being spoken about. Make it larger. Why make it larger? The positive of that is given. Then the author sets more context for us by saying that, hey, right now the way it is done, it is really limited because only those people are taken into consideration who have only that disease. But if you take people from normal conditions, then the treatment that you will come up with, you will be able to see its efficacy on a wide range of people. Okay, so benefits of making the trial larger. Now we are reading the last part of the passage. Broadening the range of trial participants, FNM suggests, would enable. What will it lead to? It will lead to would enable researchers to evaluate a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions. So that's the first good effect that you would see. What good effect we would see? When you broaden the range of participants, it will help researchers to evaluate, to see the goods and the bads of a treatment's efficiency for diverse patients under various conditions. People may have different other things going on in their body. So if you incorporate more people in your trials and then you come up with a treatment, you will be able to judge the efficacy or the efficiency or the effectiveness of that treatment on different kind of patients with different kind of conditions, and to evaluate its effectiveness for different patient subgroups. So you will be able to judge the efficacy of the treatment on various conditions, people with various conditions, and different kinds of subgroup as well. Now, what does it mean? What are patient subgroups? The author does not leave us questioning that. The author takes an extra mile, goes an extra mile to explain that to us. For example, what do you mean by patient subgroup? Who can form a subgroup? The value of a treatment for a progressive disease may vary according to patient's stage of disease. So what is the first subgroup or subcategory that the author is talking about? It is saying that, for example, let's take cancer. We all know that cancer, you know, it is diagnosed or it has different stages. People who are in the preliminary stages are not in that bad a shape that people are in the advanced stage, and the treatment for these stages are also different, right? So what FNM is suggesting that, hey, if you include more people in your trials, then the treatment that you will come up with, you will be able to see or evaluate the efficacy of the treatment on people who suffer from a disease, and they could be at different stages of that disease. So it's not, I mean, you could check the effectiveness of the treatment throughout in all the stages basically. Then the author in the last sentence presents another subgroup, which is patients' ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy. We all know that, you know, we all can get fever, but the dose given for fever to a newborn is different, to a toddler is different, to an infant is different, to a teenager is different, to a grown-up is different, right? It's not that everybody takes the same dose of the same medication. No, that doesn't happen. So patient's age also forms a subgroup. So FNM are also suggesting that if you incorporate more people in your clinical trials, you will be able to see the efficacy of one particular treatment on patients who suffer from the same disease, but they are of different ages. So which age group it works well, which age group it doesn't work well, things so on and so forth, that can be assessed if more people are included in the clinical trials. Okay, so with this we come to an end of the passage, and then we make the passage summary here. Oops, the passage summary, right, sorry. So the first, we know that the passage starts with FNM's proposal, and the first part of the passage talks about making the clinical trials simpler. Collect less data, don't collect so much data, you know, that's the thing. And then in the second paragraph, we are talking about enrolling more patients, which actually connects to this larger part of their suggestion. Okay, so this is our and then he definitely presents the plus points of enrolling more people. So now that we understand the passage, let's move on to our questions. And this is our first question, main point question. And I just now summarized the entire the passage summary. So from this, what we can deduce here is that my pre-thinking would be, okay, the passage is talking about two-pronged proposal made by FNM, and they are saying that, you know, make it simpler, make it larger. If you do so, then you can improve the way the current clinical trials are done. This is the suggestion to improve the way the clinical trials are done right now. Okay, so that's what my understanding of the passage is. And with this understanding of the passage, let's now move on to the questions. And I'll be very happy to bring back your performance chart here. And trust me, guys, you guys did so good. And if I broadcast your results, choice D right there, and that indeed is the correct answer. So I see that 58% of the class did go with choice A. I mean, other answer choices are not close even, but I'll still talk about choices C and E very short, very briefly, because we did get 16%. I mean, these were the two loved ones after choice D. So E says, evaluating an analysis of certain shortcomings of current medical research practices. I find this answer choice very, very intriguing. Very, very intriguing. Why? Because, you know, if we do not understand the meaning of what this answer choice is saying, we will get attracted to that. What is it saying? Evaluating an analysis. When we were doing our xenophobia passage, Harsha told us that, hey, evaluate means pros and cons, the good part of it and the bad part of it, right? So evaluate an analysis. So it means that the author was given the analysis, already somebody did some work on the shortcomings of current medical research practices, and that analysis was given to the author, and now author is actually presenting his evaluation on that analysis of the shortcomings of current medical research trials. Does it even make sense? Is that what author is doing? Is the author evaluating the analysis of the positives and negatives of the current medical trial? Most definitely not. Where did FNM go here? Where is the suggestion made by the FNM? So choice C again is a wrong answer choice. Very flowery, very beautifully. I mean, the author has put in all its effort to make this choice sound very, very, you know, prophetic in a way, but absolutely wrong. Choice E, explaining how medical researchers have traditionally conducted clinical trials and how such trials are likely to change. Very good trap in this part. How such trials are likely to change. Did we anywhere read in the passage that, hey, people have accepted, or the medical fraternity has accepted FNM's proposal and they have said that very soon they will implement it? Is it written anywhere? I'm not hearing anything from you guys. Are you guys still with me? Let me broadcast the result. No, right? The passage does not say anywhere that, hey, they are going to accept it. It's just still at the proposal stage. FNM says this, FNM proposed this, FNM proposed that, and then FNM gives its arguments for every suggestion or every point of suggestion that they have made. That's about it. Nowhere it is going to say, hey, by the way, yes, you know, this FNM suggestion will become a reality very soon. So on that point, choice E is absolutely wrong. Why did you land up in choice E? Because you assumed that this is going to happen. No. Okay. So be very, very focused on what you read and make sure that you interpret that correctly. Let's move on to our question number 2. It was an inference question. This is what you see as the summary of the question. This is also a very important part or very important part of your learning in solving correct answer choice. I mean, look at in how many words the original question has been presented. Right? If we really break it down, this is all what the question is asking. What we can infer about the studies in which only those patients are selected who have no other ailments, right? What can we infer about that kind of a study? So we know that this is mentioned in the second paragraph where the author is talking about making the clinical trials larger. So we made an assumption over there that, hey, if you involve more people, then what will happen is that you will be you know, I always been under this. There was thereby a treatment successful. Anyway, so that line comes before this where he is saying that therefore getting more representative data, right? So over there, we made this inference that the result of the current clinical trials are very, very limited. They are very limited in their application. The second thing is that they are only done in ideal conditions because they only incorporate people who have only that particular ailment, right? So these were the 2 points that we could talk about that particular studies in which people only suffering from that disease is taken. Okay, so these are the 2 inferences we could think about. It's not representative and they are only done on very select group of people. So and trust me, you guys did phenomenally well in this one, and if I broadcast the result, your results are even better here than your first question. 60 for the last one we had 58% accuracy. For this question is 61%. So very, very good. You guys were thinking in the right direction. I'll just quickly talk about choice D. Maybe it would allow researchers to limit information collection without increasing the risk that important variables could be overlooked. Choice D is a very interesting answer choice, and it uses a snare which is very frequently used in creating incorrect answer choices. Now, this particular line or this particular statement has been mentioned, you know, with regards to making the trials larger. Remember, it appears in the second paragraph and it talks about why it was larger. But the talk about limit information creation without increasing the risk that important variables could be overlooked has been mentioned in connection with making the clinical trials simpler. So the entire context of this statement is different. This particular information does not even connect with the context of this given statement. So choice D is absolutely out, right? Keep this point in mind, that you will see this point in very many incorrect answer choices. The context has been changed, but just because you have read it in the passage, it would lure you to select it, because yeah, it was there in the passage, but you will probably not process the context correctly. So that's a snare over there. That's why choice D is out. Okay, moving. It would be the best way to sample the total population. Somebody would, I don't know why you would choose even choice C, because it is talking about the way the current clinical trials are done, and no way the author says that it's the best way to sample. It doesn't do total population, because it is so limiting in choosing the subjects that they do, right? So definitely choice C is incorrect. Question number 3. See how many words have been used for the question, but when you really break it down, this is exactly what it stands as. It can be inferred from the passage that a study limited to patients like those mentioned in lines, whatever, would have which of the following advantages over the kind of study proposed by F&M. Basically, what is the advantage that you can think about mentioned in the second paragraph about the way the clinical trials are conducted today? And that's really easy to understand. I mean, it's really not a plus point, but if you have to say it in a relative term, that okay, we know from the passage that the current clinical trials only include those patients who suffer from that very particular ailment that is under study. What happens is that they don't have to look into a lot of data. They don't have to work with a lot of data. But if they include a lot of people with all sorts of diseases and problems going on, then probably they will have a lot more data to look into. But in that way, the current clinical trials are, they have a plus point that they don't have too much data to look into when it comes to when you have limited the subject of your trial. So this is the only advantage, only so-called advantage we can think of given in the passage. And with this, you guys did very good with this question as well. So here, broadcasting the result. The majority of the class was with the correct answer choice, 51%. But I would quickly like to touch upon choice E, which was the second best answer choice. It would enable researchers to assess the value of an experimental treatment for the average person or average patient. This just does not happen. This just does not happen in the current clinical trials. They do not take average patients to begin with. They do not even include average patient in their studies, right? So how will they be able to do it? So you probably landed up with this answer choice if you did not understand the implied meaning of ideal conditions and normal condition. I mean, that's the only reason that comes to my mind for not being able to understand, or maybe the understanding the question. Okay. So with this, I will move on to, or maybe I can just quickly talk about choice D also. It would help researchers to identify subgroups of patients with secondary conditions that might also be treatable. Now, this is the advantage. This is the advantage of F&M's proposal. If F&M way of clinical trial is done, that's when this advantage will come out. The clinical trials do not do that. They are not looking into patient subgroups. They are not looking into anything. The patient subgroup things only comes up as an advantage for F&M suggestion making the clinical trials larger. So choice D is definitely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Okay, yeah, misinterpreted the question. That is also a classic case of getting a question wrong. When you just get, you just get stuck, or you just get stuck in the words of the question. I mean, seriously, there was no need for so many things, but yeah, that's one way of making the question sound very difficult when it is not really that difficult. Okay, question number 4. It's a function question. The author is, we are asked to figure out the reason why this last statement, this is the very last statement in the passage, why this statement has been made in the passage. Patients' ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy. Why this particular statement has been made in the passage? From the analysis of our passage, we understand that this is one of the advantages of FNM's proposal for making the clinical trials larger. So this is basically to boost or to support or to substantiate the point that what FNM are saying is actually right. You know, that it should be done that way. So basically it substantiates, or it brings out the advantage of doing the clinical trials in the way FNM are suggesting. Okay, so with this understanding, if we move ahead, choice D is the correct answer for this one. While you are looking at the answer choices, let me bring you the poll here and look at that clean sweep. The best so far, 72%. I mean, the rest of the answer choices, A, E, and D, A, C, A, B, and E do not even come closer, right? It's the clean sweep with D. Illustrate a point about the value of enrolling a wide range of patients in clinical trials. So you guys did understand this part of the passage very, very well, which is very, very good. I'll still talk about choice C maybe. Indicate why progressive diseases may require different stages at different treatments at different stages. Just think about it. Does the passage really say that if we do this, we will be able to understand why different people would that hey, they come, we will understand that this is what is happening, people at different stages will require different. Is that the reason why this is being done? Not at all. Not at all. That is definitely not why the patient's age group has been mentioned. And another thing to really think about is that this is talking about patients' ages. That's one category. Remember, the author presented 2 examples. He says, for example, then he talks about people suffering from a disease that is present in different stages. That's one subgroup. Another subgroup is the patient age. Here the author is talking about patient's age. This forms another subgroup. So on this basis also we can easily reject choice C. Okay. Okay, somebody said let's talk about choice E. Substantiate an argument about the problems inherent in enrolling large numbers of patients in clinical trial. When he's talking about patients' ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy, this is not a problem of enrolling a large number of patients. It is actually an advantage of enrolling a large number of patients in the clinical trials as suggested by FNM. So this answer choice is absolutely opposite. Right? Why did FNM say that include more people? They say include more people because then what will happen is that you will understand the effectiveness of a treatment on people at different age groups. Right? And it is saying that it is its inherent problem. That's not correct. That's going totally in the opposite direction. All right. With this, we'll come to the last question, the most difficult of all the questions that you saw in this passage, the most confusing one. Let's take a look. According to the passage, which of the following describes a result of the way in which researchers generally conduct clinical trials. That means the author is talking about the cause and effect. What is the cause? The cause is mentioned here. The current clinical trials, the way they are done, what is the effect of that? Okay, what is the effect of that? That's exactly what it is asking about, the cause and effect. So, in the first paragraph, we understood that, if you when the trials are not simpler, because that's what it is, the current clinical trials are not simpler, what is happening? They are collecting too much data and thereby escalating cost. So that's first cause and effect. This is the only cause and effect that is mentioned regarding collecting too much information for the current clinical trials, right? That's our cause and effect, very, very clearly mentioned in the passage. When we take a look at the second part of the sentence, second part of the passage, here, although the cause and effect is not very explicit, but we can still understand that when the author says that a treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions can be evaluated under normal conditions, or maybe even this point, thereby obtaining a more representative sample of the total population with the disease under study. What do we understand? We understand that the cause is the way the clinical trials are done. The result is they are not very representative, right? The results are not the information that is obtained is not very representative. So those, or probably you could reword it by saying that the application is very limited. So these are the two cause and effects that are mentioned or that can be deduced from the passage, right? So if with this pre-thinking we move on to our answer choice analysis, choice A is clear, correct answer. And let me broadcast the result. But as we have already seen, the tussle is always between A and C, and somehow C wins. We'll talk about why C is incorrect, and for that, let me bring in, I would also like to keep this poll on because I want to hear from you what you think about the analysis that I do. Because that's very, very important to understand that you understood the question as well as the answer choice and the passage, of course. Okay, so let's see what is A saying, why A is right. They expend resources on the storage of information likely to be irrelevant to the study that are conducting. Now, this is the part of the sentence that this answer choice is talking about here. Okay, if I were to change the color of the text, this is what I have. Thereby escalating costs of data collection, storage, and analysis. Now, why many people reject choice A? You may say that, hey, the passage is saying that the cost related to all the three things improved, right? Data collection also, data storage also, and data analysis also. But choice A only talks about data storage. It is not talking about data collection, or it is not talking about data analysis. It is partial scope. Even if it is partial, can you say that this piece of information is incorrect? Can you say that? Let me just clear. Thank you so much for all the kind words. But what I'm saying is that even if, the author has said that the cost for A, B, and C goes up, right? But in this answer choice, the author is saying that, hey, the cost for B goes up. Where is he wrong in saying that? Yes, he has not chosen to present the other two aspects. But the aspect that he is presenting in this answer choice is correct as well. Okay, so choice A indeed is the correct answer. Now let's come to choice C. What is the question asking? When we simplified the question, we understood that we need to find out the result, right? We need to find out the result of, it's written over here also. We need to find out the result of the way in which current clinical trials are done today. Now this is the point which is addressed in choice number C. I want you to tell me, is this part mentioned? I mean, it still looks dark. Let me put another color on it. Maybe this. Yeah. Does this part talk about the effect? Is it talking about an effect, or is it talking about a contention that the proposal of FNM may face? What is it? Has this part that, you know, if you suggest us that we take FNM's suggestion, what will happen is that we can, you know, we will lose some data, maybe. That could be important. Has this, but you will not lose any data. Has this been presented as an effect of the trial? They avoid the risk of overlooking variables that might affect their findings. Is this point mentioned as the effect? All right. No, it is not. It is not mentioned as the effect. It is just presenting a point that, hey, this is what happens, that they collect so much of data. It has not been presented as a cause and effect. That causality, again, it's a trap. It's a trap. Yes, it talks about this point in the, again, another point to look into is that they cannot avoid the risk totally. I mean, you know, FNM clearly says that, hey, that risk is not completely eliminable. You cannot eliminate that point, right? So that's not going to happen. You are not going to avoid the risk completely. That's not going to happen. So that is also incorrect. However, this point is not even mentioned as the effect of, the author is not saying that, hey, clinical trials collect so much data because they avoid, or they want to avoid, the risk of losing variables for the trial. No, they are not saying that. Okay. Would choice C be correct if it said they tried to avoid? No, it would still be incorrect, because this point has not been mentioned as an effect of collecting too much data. Yes, you can, there is a connection between these two. Again, I think this point was mentioned in the EC passage, where Harsha clearly, maybe xenophobia, where he clearly spoke about that there could be different kind of connections among information in a passage. There could be cause and effect. All the cause and effects are presented by thereby, therefore, because of, as a result of, so on and so forth. We saw that. Yes, there is a connection between collecting so much data and trying not to overlook any of the data. But this connection has not been mentioned as cause and effect. Right? It has not been presented as a cause and effect. The author is not saying that this is the effect of that. Does it really happen? Again, if you are saying that it can be the effect of it, again, come to think about it. Does the author say that because they collect so much data, the effect is that they avoid that risk? No, because that risk is never completely eliminable. So in both, the information presented by choice C is incorrect. That is also wrong. And the context of this information is also incorrect. Both are incorrect. Firstly, it is not mentioned as an effect. That's one thing, right? So that's the context change. Another change is that this is not what the passage is saying. The passage is not saying that, hey, if you collect too much data, you are going to avoid the overlooking of variables. That's never going to happen probably. Okay? So in both respects, this answer choice is wrong. So yes, once again, this point proves to us that, you know, it is, you carry on with your reading comprehension till you're done with your answering the questions also, because you'll have to keep interpreting the information given in the questions as well as the answer choices. I mean, some of the questions, when we broke down, we saw how simple those questions were. But another way to confuse you, just add the question stages to make the question wordy, so that you keep reading and you keep losing track of the real thing over there. You just get stuck in the network of the words over there. That's what test takers do. I know that's pretty brutal, but yeah, that's what they do. All right. So with this, I guess I'm done with my part. I would like to welcome back Harsha for the end note. So Harsha, over to you. And thank you guys. Thank you so very much for being so patient and diligent with this session. We've been going on for more than 2.5 hours right now, but you guys really want to learn. So thank you so much. Harsha, over to you.
All right, folks, I'm back, and let's again do a quick sound check. Just on the short answer part, if you guys can hear me, just type yes. Perfect, lovely to see yeses again. So I think we learned a lot from this entire session. We started with 2 short passages and then again come back to this particular passage. Not everybody is familiar with the pharma industry and how drug manufacturing happens. It does not matter. So again, coming back to those core insights, reading with intent. You saw how Shraddha broke down each and every sentence to extract meaning. The same stuff that you saw in those passages 1 and 2, we now apply to a official OG 700 level passage. Break down those big sentences, focus on those keywords, summarize, most important. All right. So now let's talk about, this slide is just a bit of motivation, why you should really go for a 730 plus score. I was happy to see that 60% of us wanted that score. Why you should really go for it is, hey, it has an impact on the kind of schools that you can convert, and as a result of that, it kind of has an impact on your future earning potential, the kind of salaries that you'll draw. And of course, most of you are aware that there is some kind of a correlation between your GMAT score and the scholarship amounts that you can get. So keep that motivation in mind as we talk about the closing stages of this session. Throughout this session, a lot of you would have this one doubt, which I'm going to address right now. All right. So firstly, let's talk about the next steps. What is it that you need to do? Now we have introduced in this session a particular method of how to go about cracking RC passages. Now, the next aspect that's very, very important is what should you do to build this ability further? You need to master this method. And if you notice, this method is predicated on reading slowly. We read slow. We don't read fast. We don't skim. We don't rush. We don't skip. Very, very important. The next aspect that can help you is you need to look at the right data to power your success. And we're going to discuss everything right now. So first, let's address that elephant in the room. How many of you find this logic to be counterintuitive? Throughout this entire session, we're kind of telling you that you need to read slow, you need to read slow. How many of you believe that, hey, this is good, this is difficult, how do you do this, in your GMAT test environment? How many of you have this doubt or concern about time? I'm sure this is something that you feel, hey, how can you do all this? The kind of level of analysis that we have done for each and every passage, how can you do this in 3 or 4 minutes? By practice, we'll get through. I love that answer. Simply put, I'm going to give you the proof of everything. All right. So right now, this may not apply to everybody right now, but once you reach the requisite level of ability, what you will see is that you pretty much do all your small and medium passages in 7 minutes. How does that work? Your average passage or your average passage, it takes only around 3 minutes to read this way. Once you've reached a certain level of ability, not right now. If you're already there, fantastic. But if you're not there yet, a little bit of practice, a little bit of ability building, 3 minutes to do your regular passage. A passage like the one we just solved should take you around 3.5 minutes or 4 minutes at the max. A really difficult passage, some of those monstrous passages, typically they should take you around 4 minutes. It can even go up to 4.5 maximum, but typically those also get done in 4 minutes. And then here's the beauty, because you have analyzed the passage at this level, such a brutal level of analysis that you have done in the passage, what really happens is we save time on option choice analysis. Typically, each and every RC question takes us less than or equal to 1 minute to solve. 1 minute is the max time. And that's the beauty. And as a result of that, what we typically see is 7 to 8 minutes, including passage reading time, to solve each and every question. And don't just take my word for it. I'm going to show actual anecdotal data for this, because we've been doing this for 10 years. If it didn't work, we wouldn't be here professing this as a method. It's worked for our students. That's why we're here telling you this. So let's take the case of Anastasia, who scored a 740 on the GMAT. You should read all the text, not only the first and last. as long as you really understand the whole, she meant to say, passage here. Like I said, we put unedited, we don't do any editing, it's all raw footage here. As long as you understand the whole passage, it takes only 30 to 50 seconds to answer each question. Think about it. The more you read, the greater is your skill. Another example, Nishant. Again, focus on this aspect. Do not stress about the timing at this stage. Take 3+ minutes to read, even if it's a long passage, maybe a little over 4 minutes, that's perfectly fine. The strategy has the initial investment of time, but hey, what? Look at this. Any of those RC questions you can solve in 45 to 60% flat. All right. In Nishant's case, let us also give you actual evidence of his ESR. This is actually Nishant's ESR from his GMAT. Look at the time. 2 minutes. 2 minutes per question. That's 8 minutes for the overall passage, including time to read. That's a great average. This is, if you can do this, that's great. It's a fantastic rate. So what does he say? The slow reading of passage, it does not take any more time than your current method if you're skimming, skipping, whatever it is. And here's the additional booster shot. It builds your confidence. I'm sure some of you have that, some of you, not just some of you, all of us, while we are taking tests, once we made a guess for a question, that lingers in your mind that, hey, I'm not sure I got the correct answer there. And that starts eroding your confidence. I'm sure a lot of you have felt that. Have you felt that? In all the tests I've taken, I've seen that happen. I thought I solved that question correctly, but I'm not 100% confident, and therefore it's playing on my mind. That confidence starts to erode. If you're able to do passage analysis at this level, that's not going to happen. When I'm rejecting an incorrect option choice, I'm extremely confident about rejecting it. When I'm selecting something, I'm extremely confident about selecting it, because my passage analysis is that strong. And that's very, very important from a confidence perspective. So this is actually evidence, and we're going to give the links for the YouTube channel as well. You should be checking out the student stories. These are people who have been in this journey, who have asked the same questions. The same question, can all this be done within 2 minutes? Can all this be done within 8 minutes? Yes, the answer is yes. It's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. And thank God for that, because it's eventually relative grading. You need to be better than 90% of the test taking population, but it's definitely doable. Dr. Rohit Singh Malan is another example. He's a very, very smart guy. This is a guy who is a doctor by profession, and he cleared the civil services exam. Look at what he says. Before he got a V27, he was forced to read the passage multiple times because of something he did not understand. After applying these reading strategies, the need to read the passages reduced drastically. And this is a point for all of you CR enthusiasts. By the way, we are having a CR session next week as well. Even for me, I initially started learning CR, then I went to RC. And then when I went back to CR with RC, understanding the ability to read the passages a particular way, even my CR improved. And that's something you will see when you start applying the RC methodology. So do check all this and more on our YouTube channel. This is slightly dated. It's a little more than 175 right now. We'll share the links shortly. So now let's talk about, so the time part, I hope I've convinced you that this is all possible. It just requires a little bit of effort and practice. Now let's talk about how does a 90th percentiler really prepare in terms of looking at data and understanding and taking feedback from data. So at e-GMAT, we start with what we call as a master comprehension course. This is like the core course for all of verbal. All of verbal depends on this. Whether you're doing CR or RC or SC, you start with this. Why? It's absolutely important. We start by trying to teach you how sentences are created, how to construct long sentence, and more relevant, how do you deconstruct those long sentences. That's a skill set that's extremely important as far as RC is concerned, because RC is full of long sentences, convoluted stuff. How do you deconstruct those to understand meaning? That's something that's covered here. And what I mean by data is, by the way, these are not assessment files. These are not quiz files. Those come later. These are simply concept files, but even within concept files, we have built-in assessments. For example, in this deconstructing long sentence, if I scored only 60%, if I'm a diligent student, I'm not going to go to the next file straight away. That's a mistake. You should revise this file and understand what is it that you did not understand. Get those insights right, and then you move in. So that feedback is there even in that concept phase, even when you're learning the concepts, not just assessments which come in much later. We have those as well, of course. So you understand how to deconstruct long sentences. You understand where to pause. You realize that throughout all these passages, in all those sentences, we were breaking it down at specific points. Those are all what we call as pause points. Where should you pause? How should you pause? What is the logic for that? That's also something that we actually explain in the course. And only after that does a person actually come to reading comprehension. And within reading comprehension, we don't just directly start solving various question types. First is the foundation. I told you about reading strategies. This session covered 3 of the most important reading strategy. Overall, we have 7 of those. So these files actually cover all of them. And yet again, a good student will look at this feedback and think about, hey, do I need to revise this again before moving on? That's how you look at data. You look at the feedback being provided to you to drive improvements. Now, after you're done with all this foundation, that's when you go to each and every question type. So all of you who are not e-GMATers yet, these 2 are available in the free trial. Please check it out. I'm sure it will have some value for you. It will help you at some level how to go about main point questions. All right. So that's about it from our side. What is it that a successful student, who are aspiring to be a successful student, you should really be doing? Again, the first aspect I told you about is bringing that killer mentality into RC. That attitude of, I don't care what the topic is, I don't care how long it is, I don't care what kind of complexity it is, and unfamiliar words, complex sentences, you don't care. Whatever the topic, get immersed. You have all the tools to crack it. Get immersed into it. Use those reading strategies that we discussed as tools to extract meaning from the passage. And then, as we have seen, use the data, use everything you try to learn, use the data from it to identify where you need to refocus and relearn. All right. So any other feedback that you guys have, please put it on the short answer part. We'll be happy to hear that. And let me bring in all the links, including the session link. I'm going to share the PDF with you. All right. So first, let me give you the session PDF. That's right here. Let me close this. So this is a session PDF for anyone who wants to go through the session again. And let me also bring in study plan for those of you who feel that, making that a proper personalized study plan will help you in your journey. Make sure you click on this link and follow the steps. Then let me also bring in the links to Rajat's YouTube channel and Rajat's LinkedIn and e-GMAT's YouTube channel. Do check out the YouTube channel, guys. There's a lot you will see there. The link for the CR session, definitely. Let's see where that one is. Meanwhile, let me bring in the other aspects as well. Let's put in a few video interviews as well. So do check out these links. These are all unedited success story interviews, students who have been through the journey. So definitely there's something for you. And you can also specifically look at the students' debriefs as well. All right, so thanks for the feedback. And any other questions, also feel free to put it in the Q&A or in the short answer part. If you know the answer, we'll of course help you out with that as well. Sandeep, can you share the CR link, that particular slide? I'm not able to find that one. Maybe if you can help with that. Thanks for the good feedback, guys. Even Shada was covering her portion, I saw some very positive feedback coming in. Thanks a lot. That's a lot of music to our ears.